Big 55 final table, guys, just coming off the break, and we have got pocket sixes to kick things off. 2.5k for the next out, 15.5 for first, 7 players remaining, and it's looking like it's going to be a pretty easy fold now, isn't it? UTG opening. He hasn't been that loose from early, and we've got YR, who has been a little bit loose, but certainly not going to be a spot where he's 3-betting wide. And he does have ace queen. And unfortunately for us, he survives. We could have moved up in the pay there, but we do get kings. So let's see if we can make something happen here. Pretty good flop. Defends reasonably wide the big blind. And he just slaps us, just seems to snap mini this one up. He hasn't been that aggressive post. So this is kind of a bit weird. I think just calling is probably the best play because we do have the heart as backup. I think if we didn't have a heart, there might be... Well... There's already 344k out there, so it might be actually worthwhile just raising to get it in, I guess. But I think with the heart, we can just call. And it does look like we might need the heart here. It's actually a pretty bad card because he could have been check raising with a flush draw. He could have had 7-8, I guess. And I guess he could have... I mean, he could obviously have a 9. This is a really sick spot. This is a really gross spot. Wow. I mean, everything that he's representing gets there. This is the flush, the 9, the 7-8. He could have pocket sixes. I don't think he's trapped pre with aces, but I guess that's not impossible. I guess because he's a bit of a fish... I guess it's not impossible. Well, he probably would have re-raised pre with 10s, jacks, that sort of thing. And he's not going to value bet with 7s and 8s. He's virtually turning them into a... This is a really sick spot. And watching this now, of course, this is a post-review. Yeah, I mean, this is just too gross. I guess, I mean, if you're talking about it in terms of, ranges that we should call with, I mean, we should really be calling down there. But at the same time, I mean, we've just got a guy who hasn't really been getting that out of line post-flop. You can see he's just folded pocket 8s there and showed it. The 3-bet folded pretty quickly. I just can't think of a worse hand that would take that line. Unless we're underestimating how big a fish he is, and he's got like 10s or 8s, or he's just flipped out with some weird hand. Is it possible he's like kind of trapped with Queensbury and then taken that kind of line? Yeah, I guess it's not impossible. He did just 3-bet 8s though. I mean, he's going to three betting mostly with his big pair with pairs and big pairs. It's a really tough spot. I mean, I guess he could have trapped with aces. I guess you can have a 9. I guess you can have... I don't know, is he really going to check mini this with the straight draw on the flop? I mean, it doesn't seem so. I mean, it really seems like he's got a 9, doesn't it? I mean, very quickly sort of small raise the flop, fired turn, and then stuffed river. I mean, you would have to presume that he thinks we've got a pretty strong pair once we call turn. You would think. Unless he thinks we're just floating flop with like ace-jack with a heart, and then the turn we've got a flush draw. If he's even thinking that deep, like putting us on hands, he might just be the sort of fish that just kind of only thinking, one level. Pretty easy jam here, obviously. So, yeah, I mean, that is pretty gross. Looking at it now, I think I should probably call down there. If I had to ship this tournament, I probably would have thought, hey, that's a great fold. Lucky I made that fold. But the fact that we're only left with such a short stack, and that our opponent is kind of a little bit unclear what he's capable of. And really what I mean is capable of in terms of, errors. Yeah, I mean, it kind of looks like we're beat. I don't think he's going to value. Once in a while, I guess he might have queens or jacks and just done some really weird slow play. But I just don't think... I think it's pretty rare that he's doing that with anything for value that we're ahead of. And so, I mean, he could have had a huge flush draw on the flop, 8-10, or nut flush draw, 8-10 of hearts, or, ace 10 of hearts or something. Just decided to check raise it. He could have hit the 9. It kind of felt like he had a 9, I must admit. And, I mean, it's just it's a really tough spot. I would like to, in hindsight now, it's easy to say now, just reviewing it. At the time, I was quite zoned in. So, I was only playing one table. So, for whatever reason, perhaps I just tried to use the force and, felt that he really had it. He hasn't really been doing anything that crazy. For him to take that line, I mean, yeah, it's pretty mental. So you can see I'm trying to get information now. I might even just boom this guy and just see if he just happens to have a hand there. He says he had trips, good fold. But you guys know that, well, you guys would have heard me say on a number of occasions by now that people will lie. Obviously. I find most people are a little bit too trusting. We're going to have to fold here just because of the ICM, even though we're probably ahead from a chip EV point of view against that player's range. He says he had trips. Is he lying? Is he telling the truth? Did we make a heroic fold there and escape, busting in 7th place and give ourselves a chance to make it a bit deeper? Obviously, I'd like to think so, because the alternative is a scary thought that he just tried to double us up and give us a chip lead. Yeah, so it's a real swinging. It's a real swing where we either call and bust, or if we fold and, well, we call, and if he's got it, we bust, or he's short stack now. If we call him a wrong, we're out. If we call him a right, we're a chip leader, and as it is, we folded and just pretty short, but not out of the hunt yet. Especially with the stack depth that we're seeing around the table. And that is a little bit part of the reason why I folded, is because, there's around 100k in there pre now. So we've got an M4, 4.5, 9.5, 4.5, 3 now, and 8, and we're sitting at M5.5. So, there's still a chance we can move up in the pay as well. So, what would you guys have done? It's not a spot where you're normally going to fold, but I just think that, the snap, small raise, flop, bet, turn, shove, river. He sold me. It was a good story, and I believed it. So, I just don't think he's going to be running a bluff like that on the final table against another decent-sized stack. Especially once we call turn. It doesn't really look like he's got too much fold equity on the river. So it was pretty crazy. If it was a bluff, good on him, but it was pretty psycho if it was. I can't imagine this guy has been using boom too much, but I'm just going to have a look just in case doesn't look like he's got anything in there. But it'd be nice to know. I'd be getting pretty lucky if he. Does have 2 hands in boom, 2-5 off and 9-3 of hearts. So I hope it's not the 2-5 off. Well, it's not the 9-3 of hearts, and this would be so funny if it was a 2-5 off, and it's not the 2-5 off. Okay. That would have been a real shocker. 2-5 off. He says he has it. It was a strong line. Maybe it was a good fold. But seeing it now, I can pretty clearly remember it, even though, like I said, as I mentioned last part, been doing post 2 months 40K recording for this part 9, session 9. Yeah. But, sometimes you're going to make those laydowns. It's like making the good calls, making good laydown, if it was that. And, we're still in it. And it's going to be a pretty good payday for us anyway, regardless. And, 15.5K up top. And even if we, manage to get a few thousand from this, from this tournament, it's a pretty decent result. Obviously a bit frustrating getting close and not finishing off. But at the same time, looks like we might move up in the pay here. If Jacks will hold. They won't. Wow, there's another survivor. Don't you hate that? Final table and every short stack keeps surviving. It's going to boost our roll. It's going to give us a bit more flexibility with what we can play for the remainder of, it's just a good injector into our bankroll. And this is a very good tournament. The Big 55, 90K guaranteed. These tournaments are really good when you do run deep like this. You give yourself a really good chance to build your bankroll quickly. But obviously there's going to be a fair bit of variance because you've got massive fields to beat typically in these types of tournaments, which is why personally I would recommend for bankroll building. I mean, sure, you're going to play this tournament, you're going to add into if you can afford to, with your bankroll management, and so you certainly want to be playing it. But you do get a lot lower variance with the lower, the smaller fields. Especially during the day. You've heard me talk about that before. It's on the website as well. Pokerbankrollfast.com. The 33s, 55s and that sort of thing during the day are very, very soft. And it's pretty small fields, so you can just gradually build your bankroll. And you see some guys that do actually choose to play that schedule in the smaller fields, and their graph just looks like it's just a hill, steady going up. But if you are playing a lot of... Oh, here we go. Can we get a ace, please? We're not going to see another short stack survive, are we? Not this time. Thank you. So you got to weigh up the pros and cons, I guess. But certainly, it's pretty exciting when you get to this point. When you've only invested $55 and you can win over $15,000. Yeah. But like I said, you can expect some variance with the massive fields. There's a limp there by L. Garby in the small. Limp and snap fold. So interesting to see he has that limp fold range at what would have been, the blinds have gone up, but what would have been around M7.5-ish, M8. Some players will balance a limping, a small blind, have a small blind limping range at that stack size. One of the main reasons why they do that is because they intend to have a number of strong hands that they want to limp at that range. At that stack depth, they might be limping some jacks, queens, kings, aces, and that sort of thing. If they're going to start limping with some of those bigger hands to try to entice their opponent to jam over the top, which is going to happen a fair frequency, they're going to get raised or jammed over the top. Then you certainly want to have easy jam here. See if we can get some chips back here. He's probably going to fold here. I mean, he's been opening with a high frequency. He's got a lot of his chips back. He just snap folds, yeah. I mean, if you're going to start limping from the small blind with a lot of hands, like 9-10, and, he might be limping 7-9 suited or 5-6 suited or something, doesn't want to jam it, wants to limp, just try and hit, stab, queen 6 suited or something maybe. I mean, we're getting into the realms of hands that you could just jam, and certainly just jamming with the stack size that El Gabi had, I mean, yeah, but some players just aren't really aware of the jamming range. But another thing too that you do have to be a little bit wary of with your jamming range is that if you're not jamming hands, oh, we got an all in here. See if we can move up again. We don't want to see an ace. Sorry, we do want to see an ace. What am I talking about? Give us the ace. Yeah, I mean, if you're not going to jam, this looks like a pretty easy all in again. If you're not going to jam hands like, oh, I've just called. That is an interesting one. That was, I would dare say, a pretty easy jam. And in review, in hindsight, seeing this, it looks like a decent sized mistake, actually. I think I've done it is because Becky's been pretty tight. We haven't seen Becky open much, and we've got a number of short stacks around. So I can see why, well, essentially we're actually almost coming third in chips, which is pretty funky. We actually will be coming third after this if we win this part. And we do. Look at that. We're up to 900,000 now. And pocket eights to boot. And El Gabi M4 now, I mean, I just do not think we can fold that, especially now we've got a few more chips back. We've got a little buffer. This is obviously going to be a pretty big flip a lot of the time. And a real key pot. Oh, ace four, come on. Oh, yeah. Oh, what a turn. Wow. Action, the Jackson. Wow, all of a sudden we're back. Now I'm patting myself on the back for making the fold with the kings. Maybe. And we're up in a second chip leader. It's pretty good. So, I mean, I guess we're going to open here and not fold the shacklers. He snap folds anyway. Actually, yeah, can't remember the action. So I was kind of surprised with the eights when it turned. Just going back to what I was saying about the strategy with blind versus blind, a lot of players won't jam if they're M sort of 7, 6, 7, 8, 9. A lot of the times you just raise. They're just going to raise with big hands. And not jam. Like if you've got aces, I mean, you don't normally just jam it. You just got to keep that in mind with your jamming range, because a lot of players can discount big hands, and it just weakens your overall jamming range at that sort of stack depth. Of course, I mean, if you are jamming those hands, then it doesn't, obviously. But some of those, if you're using a power number system, you just got to be a little bit careful jamming some of the wider pair numbers, because if you're not jamming, all the big hands, you probably can't really be jamming those sort of outliers. The hands I'm talking about is like, if you got Jack, let's say Jack 6 suited, M7-ish or 6-ish, I mean, you don't really want to be jamming that if you're not jamming all your big hands, really. Like a Queen 5 suited, M7-ish and that sort of thing. You should be a little bit careful with those hands. So some players will put them into a limping range. And then if you do that, you obviously got to counter that by putting a few stronger hands in your limping range as well. Otherwise, you just can get pushed off your hands too easily. I guess we can't fold there. I mean, come on, win the flip one time. That was the key pot right there. We would have had 2 million and busted that player. And that really is, I guess, that flip there is, I mean, that's the game turner, I guess. We would have been in a really strong position if we had won that. We would have had Shacklers, who's a good player, but on the tight side and four-handed. We've got Becky, who's been playing a little bit tight, looks a little bit ICM sensitive. We've got YR, who's the aggressive player, but he's situated on our right. And with a chip lead and a little buffer like that, wow, we would have been really able to open up our game, I think, and go on the warpath. But as it is, we're still now hovering around M10. This is a close spot here, wow. I guess just calling, but I mean, we could 3-bet there to fold. I think, I think 3-bet folding there might actually be my preferred option. I really do. I think it might be a little bit more viable. I mean, I don't think Shakalos is going to jam too well. I mean, I guess he might, but we haven't had that many battles. As it is calling, it's a little bit defensive. We don't really get to assert any ICM pressure. We could 3-bet fold the jams. Just shoving is probably a bit. I feel a bit gross about just shoving pre. I mean, we could, but it's kind of a bit risky with the stack distribution that we have right now, which is why I don't mind 3-bet folding. As it is now, I mean, wow, it looks like he's just valuing us here. Does he do this? I think we can. I think we have two options. We're going to check jam, turn our hands into a bluff, or actually fold. I don't really like the call there. Yeah, so I mean, we had a lot of outs on the turn. Obviously, we had we had any 6, queen, diamond, but obviously calling turn is fine. He check back flop, pot controlling pretty standard with a weak ace. Check call turn pretty normal. The river, I really don't think is value betting worse. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty thin if he values a weak ace there to get a queen to call. Yeah, I mean, there's just not enough hands. I think he's just checking. So I do think we can actually fold turn river there. Unless we want to turn our hand into a bluff. But I think that's quite risky. And if we had have done that, I mean, I guess he's not really folding 2-pair. That the 2-pair that he had, so it wouldn't have worked. It would have been interesting to see what he would have done pre-flop. I'm guessing he would have probably have folded, but he may have considered 4-bet jamming, but I just don't think he's going to get that out of line at this stack depth. So I think I did kind of misplay that hand a little bit. I don't think it was a mistake, but I just think I think I could play the hand better. I mean, maybe that is a mistake. I mean, I don't think we played it unprofitably other than the river call, but I think we could take a better line by actually 3-betting it pre. It is getting sort of marginal because it's got a fair bit of strength, A6 suited against what could be a steal. I mean, but I just don't think it really has enough playability. We can get ourselves in sticky spots like we did post. I just think it's going to play better as a 3-bet, and then unfortunately just have to fold to jam. If that opponent was more aggressive, I mean, we could just stick it pre. I think we could even almost stick that pre, the 7-10. That's pretty close, I think. I think that guy's just going to open on us really wide and just put pressure on us because of the ICM. He only minned, he gets good leverage. He's kind of been getting away with a fair bit. Having said that, I mean, we haven't really had that many good spots. Even then, with 7-10 off, it's pretty dirty. But we are the shortest stack now. We've got to make something happen. 10-9 is, I mean, we can probably go ahead and just jam that. I think it's borderline, but I think it asserts ICM pressure, which is good. Even though these guys have us covered, they don't really want to lose 600,000. So, especially Becky. I think I could have jammed that. It'd be interesting to see what ICMizer says. From a chip EV point of view, I mean, it's very borderline. It's on the cusp. It's a break-even jam. But, Shackles and Becky are a little bit on the tight side. I think they are a little bit wary right now of the ICM. I wouldn't have thought so at the start with Becky. Talking about obviously this clown player here that just raised... the evil clown seemed a bit spewy, I thought, potentially at the start, but seems to have tightened up a bit. Now there's serious money at stake. So the 9-10, I think we plug that into the ICMizer. It's probably going to be a jam. So I think... I guess we have to jam this. This is a pretty gross spot. Yeah, it's nasty. Oh, come on, baby. Look at that. Yeah, I don't think we can quite fold there at that stack depth. But it did kind of feel like Shackles, who hasn't been getting too out of line, was... Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's getting too out of line there. and his stats sort of indicate that he's not. Interesting that he just jams M9 there. It's a pretty big jam. He's probably got like eights or something like that, and doesn't want to get 3-bet or jammed on because he won't be able to call. This is another interesting one here. You know, as sick as it is, I think we can actually just shove that. I think we can, because I think YRYI is just opening too wide. And I think just shoving the King 10 suited there, it's a pretty big shove, but I think his just cutoff range is so wide, and, you know, King 10 suited has pretty good equity against most hands. I mean, his calling range is obviously going to be pretty tight. He's probably going to call sort of ace-jack suited and ace-queen. I don't know if he calls ace-10. You know, that would be kind of a pretty sick call in this instance with these stacks. Final table bubble. I mean, you know, bubble factor is pretty high right now. So, and he's probably going to call, I guess, eights up as well. Something like that. Although he did call a snapper when we jammed M 4.5 from UTG before with ace-9 in the big blind. And I think that's when we were like 8-handed or something, right? Last part. So he's a little bit on the loose side. But yeah, I just think King 10 is going to play pretty nicely there as a jam. So, and you got to remember too, once he raises, like, there's 200,000 out there every time someone mins it. 206,000 out there when there's a min. So, you know, every 200k you pick up it's 20% of our stack. You know, it's pretty key. And it is only 5-handed, so, I mean, we've got to get a little bit more active. So, yeah. I think I just faded a bit with this tournament with my focus. I think that I'm playing a little bit. I'm playing to move up in the pay, which, you know, is fine. But I think that I just should step up the aggression a little bit. And having said that, I did jam the ace-6 off before, but we were getting pretty short. But yeah, I think the King 10, you know, it's a big jam. But I just think why I was opening so wide that it's going to work out well. And the calling ranges that all players have are so tight right now. And King 10's suited doesn't play too bad against those ranges. I mean, even if he's got, you know, ace queen or jacks or something, I mean, we're obviously behind, but we're not a massive dog. So we lose another one. That's getting further than I thought I was going to in this. Just surviving. But I do think playing for the win would have been, you know, I think even here, I think 3-betting is probably going to be okay. Just because his range is so wide, his fold to 3-bet, I think I overestimated how sticky he might be. But I think just making an exploitive 3-bet every time he raises actually from this point, and just trying to build chips, get aggressive. I think I was a little bit too worried that he'd get sticky and make sticky calls and put us in tough spots post, or potentially jam over the top of us since he's a big stack, and he can put a lot of pressure on us, especially since Shuckler's is shorter. But I think lesson learned here is that perhaps just a bit, just going for the win a bit more, which is how I normally play, I think. But in this particular instance, I think I could have lifted the aggression a little bit. I guess this spot here would have been pretty tough. I guess, again, we probably could have jammed it, but who knows, I may have just called. It would have been pretty sick too, losing full house to aces there. I think I would have just called there and potentially have, I probably would have busted that hand if small blind hadn't have jammed. And we did see Becky had another strong hand, so this is obviously a pretty easy jam. Ace-4 suited. ICM-wise, it's a pretty clear jam. Becky's tightened up a bit, and we certainly don't want to raise and get jammed on because then we have to fold. And these suited aces play quite well as jams because the equity they always have, even against tight ranges. Especially the ace-4, the ace-low, where it can make straights as well. And that's probably a call, I guess. Yeah, and that's the end of the chapter. I guess ace-9 there is probably a call. Yeah, I mean, I might even whip out the ICMizer and have a little look at it. and just see the ranges there actually. So here we are in the ICMizer, and just going to be taking a look at this Ace 4. So I'm just going to plug in those stacks. For the payout structure, let's go with, let's just do warm-up, because it's going to be a fairly similar structure in terms of there's a lot of players, there's a lot up top, and there is 4 players remaining, and the cutoff has, let's just say 780,000. And the button had 2.2 mil. And we were in the small blind, we had the Ace 4, and we had 750. And the big blind has 2 mil. And we have the Ace 4 suited. And what was the other thing I was going to do? Oh, the blinds. 25 and 50,000. Not there, is it? I guess we just add that. 25,000. Oops, 25,000. 50,000. Making hard work of this. And then he's 5,000, so there we go. Put that level in. And so we are the small blind. Haven't actually used this program for a little while. So, I mean, obviously, the Ace 4 is no brainer. And you can see how wide we can be jamming. I probably wouldn't jam some of these outliers here just because Becky, I don't think is, even though we said they're playing a bit tighter, I don't think they're going to be that ICM, that conservative. Having said that, I mean, they did tank with the Ace 9, but, it is kind of on the fringe. This is what they should be calling with. I don't know if Becky would call with 4s and this stuff here. I don't even know if Becky would call with that, actually. I think probably that calling range there. King Jack off, probably not. I don't even know if King Queen off, actually. I think this is the sort of calling range that the player will call with. So actually, it's actually a little bit tighter than ICM. ICM was a little bit looser than I expected it would be. And so if we are looking at that sort of range, obviously we have to respond by, we can respond by jamming wider because they're calling tighter. So I've actually kind of, looking at this now, I would have thought that they'd be calling, I would have thought ICM would have indicated call it, tighter ranges than this. I just don't, I know it's four-handed and we're going to be jamming really wide, but I'm really surprised that these, some of these hands here are calls, but, obviously if we look at chip EV and then we run it, now we can be jamming really wide and the big blind shouldn't be calling too crazily. But, if it's ICM, again, we're jamming pretty wide to apply pressure. And, I probably wouldn't, I wouldn't be jamming a lot of this stuff, but if this is the range that Becky's calling that we said, sorry to harp on here, it's kind of going through this with you guys at the same time, thinking this is quite interesting. Then something like that anyway, then we can actually jam any two. So I'm a little bit surprised about that. And I guess, even though I had the player marked in purple as being, a weaker player, and therefore I usually think that, well, that's just going to mean that they're going to be calling too wide and not following ICM. But I do think in this particular instance, they're kind of forced to follow sort of closely to ICM. It's a pretty clear spot where, they're risking almost half their stack 4-way with big money up top. for a decent, sort of 7.5 jam. So yeah, it's really interesting that we could have jammed that wide. I just wouldn't have thought it would be any two, but there you go. As it was, we could have been jamming this range, and I probably wouldn't even been jamming quite this wide. I mean, Queen 7 suited, I would. Well, actually, Queen 6 up, I would. Jack 7 suited up, I would. Yeah, 10s, 5-9 suited, probably not. 4-5 suited, no. Yeah, actually, that does look pretty reasonable. I mean, you got to remember we only need an M of 7.5 plus we apply pressure, so. And we were the shortest stack as well. Well, sort of even with shucklers, actually. So, yeah, interesting. Some of you it might have been obvious. Others might not have been. For me, I think it's just important to keep in mind how the particular player is going to respond to the range for, in that particular situation where they're kind of comfortable up on 2 million. Do they want to take a risk for 750,000? At the same time, they do know you're pushing wide and that sort of thing. They can afford to take a bit of a hit. Really depends on the players, on their mentality and what they're trying to do in the tournament, whether they're trying to win or whether they're a bit tight. And like I said, I think Becky actually, even though at the start I would have thought they were kind of loose and likely to call too wide and be ignorant of ICM, they did show a tendency to tighten up quite a bit as the final table, as we got more into the final table. So, yeah, I guess we can jam pretty wide since they may actually be a little bit, more following ICM a little bit more closely, or even overcompensating, as the case may be, according to this range anyway, I think. But, I could be wrong. I mean, they did tank, though, with ace-9 for a decent amount, though. So, but I guess it was a pretty big decision. A lot of money up top, a couple of K kind of decisions, so you want to make sure you think it through. So maybe they would have called wider. Yeah, we'll just go through one more hand, guys. And that is, I just wanted to look at the King 10. And here it is here. This is going to be interesting because, I know this is going to show you it's a super easy jam. But if we just go back to here where we had the stacks now of, we're on the button and we have 1.1. So I've just plugged in the numbers, guys, and the stack sizes, and the button is opening 8%. We're going to edit that in a moment. And obviously we're going to be jamming over the top of that pretty tight. But we know that this player has been opening really wide. And I'd say they're probably opening something like 60%, not 60, 50? Maybe 40, let's say 40. I mean, I really do think that player's opening really wide, and they've got the big stack, and they're putting a lot of pressure on. In the cutoff, no one's really been 3-betting them. They're getting away with a lot. So I think they might be opening something like this. And once we see that sort of range, obviously now we can go bananas. Not bananas, but we can start pushing pretty wide. I actually thought it would have been a lot wider than that. It's saying 13%. King 10 suited is in there, which I knew it would be. But I'm really surprised actually that. Well, actually, that does look pretty reasonable, doesn't it? I'm surprised not all the pairs are in there. I probably would have jammed all the pairs, to be honest, which actually may have been a mistake. We can see it would have been if we have anticipated our opponent's opening range to be 40, around that to be correct, 40%, which I think is, if anything, slightly conservative given the frequency that player's raising. The stats tell us they're raising with 49%, but I think they seem to like they've been raising even more than that on the final table, especially in that situation where they've got a big stack and they're putting pressure on, and the players behind were not standing up to them. They were getting away with quite a lot of stealing. If we extend it out to 50%, let's just see this increase here we get. Not that significant. We're out to sort of 16% of hands now. We're only down to pocket fives, which I find pretty surprising. I would have actually have jammed any pair. And ace-wise, yeah, that's probably about what this is a range I probably wouldn't normally be jamming king 9 suited and queen 10 suited there. King 10 off. But other than that, yeah, I mean, I think this range is pretty reasonable. And I do think king 10, looking at it now, I can see that, well, for me, seeing it now, I feel like it's a pretty clear jam. But at the time, like I said, I think I was playing too much to... maybe I just felt like I was going to get more clear spots against these players because there was a few inexperienced players there. But having said that, I feel like it's a pretty clear jam here, looking at it now. I mean, who knows? Maybe he's got the nuts, but... yeah, I mean, I do feel that I did fade away a bit in terms of my focus in this final table. Probably played a little bit too tight and should have gone for the win a bit more. And, when you do go for the win, you will bust out a bit earlier sometimes. But at the same time, when you do get it, you get the max payout, which is really important. And, yeah, I mean, I think I played okay. But I just do think that there's a few sort of close decisions, like the river call with the a6 and the king 10 suited there jamming, and the ace jack suited I think I probably could have jammed, even though Becky had been a bit tight before when I flopped top pair, and we ended up winning that pot anyway. But these are kind of pretty borderline spots and pretty close, I think. But when you're talking about a final table, when there's such big payouts at stake, even a small, you shouldn't really be making even a small mistake. I mean, it's kind of compounded. If this was just some early stage, or I just got short halfway through some 27 turbo, I probably wouldn't be even really thinking about it. But when there's big money up top, and you're one tabling, you want to make as accurate decisions as you can. And I do think that it's one of the problems when you play long sessions too, is that you do kind of leave yourself potentially getting pretty tired when you need to be in the zone the most at the end, when there's big money at stake. But it's just the part of the nature of it, and you just got to try and make sure you get the stamina to follow through and stay focused the whole time. And if you haven't and you can't, if you're falling asleep and whatever, which I have a friend who's fallen asleep deep in their Sunday Millions a couple of times. He's actually chopped at one time, but yeah, I mean, you got to obviously it's obviously a leak. It's a pretty clear leak, so falling asleep and playing. But yeah, you got to just stay switched on and do your best. Yeah, I do think in this review I probably I think I could have played a bit better, and I'd like a retake. I'd like to do this final table, start this final table over, lift the aggression, a bit more 3-betting, a bit more jamming, and mixing it up, and might have got a better result. But it was still a good score nonetheless. I picked up quite a few thou, which has boosted the roll significantly and frees us up to play a lot more tournaments and continue to work towards that 40k target in 2 months. So thanks again for tuning in, guys. This has been Aces Up. Let's see you next time.